Scott Wedgewood is gone. Steven Stamkos is frustrated, and the Predators lost twice in overtime. It's time for a Nashville Predators therapy session.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators therapy session. Thank you for making us your first therapy session of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators therapy session, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your therapy session every day. Want to welcome any first-time listeners to our circle of trust, and of course, give a shout out to our everydayers and our Locked On Predators insider community to this therapy session. Misery loves company, and we are so glad you all are here. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, 2 overtime losses over the weekend, a goalie trade, and quite a quote from Steven Stamkos. Look, we all need a little bit of hockey therapy. Today on the show, we're going to validate our feelings. We're going to work to accept what is. We're going to focus on the things that we can change. And hopefully we're going to come out of this episode on the other side with just maybe a titch more hockey joy in the Nashville Predators community. Before we dive into all of that work, we want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. All right, Emma, what a weekend. First of all, I want to be very clear about something with that opening. I am not in any way mocking therapy. I am a big proponent of it. I'm somebody who has been doing it off and on since way back in the day where you weren't allowed to talk about it. So actually, just as a stance, the Locked On Predators podcast, huge proponents of therapy. And we've read the comments, and some of you might want to explore that. And we say that with love. We say that with love. But we're just going to talk through what is going on with the Nashville Predators, because it's a whole thing, Emma. Like, Predators fandom right now, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant place to be right now, Predators land. It's just not. And understandably so. I don't mean to mock or talk down to anyone who is really in their feels about this team right now, because you have every right to be. It is not good. Things are not going well.
No. Just to kind of highlight the facts from the weekend, the Predators lost in overtime to Tampa Bay 3-2. They lost in overtime to Minnesota 3-2. 3-2 seems to be the overtime score of the season for the Predators. We asked our Locked On Predators insiders to just kind of tell us how they're feeling about these losses. Henry said it's like kissing your sister losing in overtime. Macy said, my one word for the game is disappointed, but not surprised. At this point, I get a feeling of impending doom every single time we go to overtime. Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. Tanner said it's Groundhog Day. Rebecca said it's deja vu, vu. Predators have lost 3 in a row in overtime by a score of, wait for it, 3-2. So we've got, they got 3 points. Let's look at the positive side of it. They got 3 points. They could not close a game out in overtime. Emma, you talk about this team. It's just, they're kind of in a state, and the fan base is in a state. And again, like you said, rightly so. For a team that entered the season with high expectations across the board, this wasn't just Predators fans. This was NHL pundits. This was everybody. To see them where they are is just shocking and disappointing. But let's step back and just kind of tell me, what did you see in these 2 games, Emma? Just setting emotion aside, what did you see from this Predators team, against Tampa Bay and against Minnesota? And how do you see them actually performing in these 2 games?
We talked about this before the show, and we were both saying how the eye test would tell you there were two completely different games, even though the end result was the same and a lot of the underlying stats looked similar. I thought that the effort against Minnesota was really strong. I thought it looked good. Against Tampa, less so. I just think that there was a little bit more sloppiness and some more mistakes, very avoidable mistakes against Tampa. I think that they were a lot more dialed in and a lot more connected in the way that they played against Minnesota. I mean, that's a really good hockey team over there.
That's a great hockey team right now.
They were able to, he had a goal and an assist, but we talked about this too, that is a limited version of Kirill Kaprizov. So they were able to limit Kirill Kaprizov, for the most part. But I think that, they were really able to kind of contain the opponent a lot better. And it was a really evenly matched in terms of shots and chances. Like, it looked like a very evenly matched game. Like, if you just watched that game against Minnesota and you didn't know anything about the stats or the standings, you would probably think that these teams were right, like right neck and neck with each other. And so it's like, you can see it, you're seeing flashes of it, but it's still very frustrating because, again, there's no faith in this team anymore that they're going to be able to kind of pull it out or, do the thing that's going to put them over the edge. It's just because they haven't shown us with any consistency that they can do it. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, it is frustrating. It was interesting what you're talking about because, you look at the stats, you look at the advanced stats in these two games between Tampa Bay and Minnesota, and the advanced stats, Corsi 4, high danger chances for and against, so similar. So similar. But I agree with you. These were two very different looking games as far as like the team being connected, as far as the team playing well together. Andrew Brunette, after the Tampa Bay Lightning game, I would say he was frustrated. Would you say, Bruno, is that an accurate assessment of what you felt like we were getting from him in post game?
Yeah, he was a man of few words in that post game. Very few words.
Very few words. But we did hear from him after the game in Minnesota. And I thought it was really interesting, Emma, what he had to say about the Tampa Bay Lightning game after the Minnesota game. So this is what we heard from Andrew Brunette post-game Minnesota about the Tampa Bay Lightning game and just about frustration on the team in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're emotional sometimes after a game, and obviously, last night, just the way it went was a little disappointing, especially after the Philly game. And, you look through it and you watch it, and it was better than I thought it was. And it was, a similar story, but, I really liked the energy tonight. I'd like to compete. I liked like I said, our transition. I liked how we went at them. We didn't sit back and give ourselves to win a game, and it didn't happen, but there's lots of good. I think you try to, and words are cheap, and you try to say, just let it go. And I understand that. It's hard to let go. But I think our mindset has to be a little bit more free. And we're getting there. And that's why it's nice when you create, I thought we had, 70 attempts tonight. That's enough to probably to get more than 2. And I think once we bust open, we get 3 or 4, I think we'll feel better about ourselves. And I think we'll maybe lighten the grip on our stick and enjoy the game a little bit more. Right now, like I said, frustration's a dangerous emotion. And we're working hard as we can not to let it bother us. And I think it's been better, and we'll be challenged again next week.
Here's one thing that I want to say, and frustration is a word that, look, we're hearing a lot. We're hearing it a lot in the locker room. We're hearing it a lot from Andrew Brunette. We're hearing it a lot from the fan base. And again, rightly so. This has been such a profoundly underperforming, shocking season for the Nashville Predators. And I get that. And I know that in the hockey world, what matters are results. And there are obviously in the fan base, the result you want is you want a Stanley Cup. And this looked like on paper a roster that could get you pretty close to competing for a Stanley Cup. And it's not happened so far. And that is so disappointing and so frustrating for this fan base. But I also think we're at a point where you like, this is going to be a slog. Like, the Nashville Predators have to slog through the muck. Like Andrew Brunette said, like, it's going to take a game where we can score 3, 4, 5 goals to kind of get out of where they're at. And I think as a fan, you absolutely can be frustrated and continue to be frustrated and want to see things change. Of course you want to see things change. But I also think at this point, if you want to find some joy, you got to look at these games like Andrew Brunette did, like these 2 games. When you really looked at them, they're playing well enough. This game against Minnesota, Emma, I would say that was a game that was played well enough if this team could find the back of the net to beat any team in the league. They are so snake bit. And I hate that term, but this team they can't score goals, but we saw in Minnesota, they did a lot of other things really well.
Yeah, and I would say in Minnesota too. I mean, I forget who it was. I think might have been Tommy Novak, like rang one off the post. That's their nightly goal post. That seems to be a thing now. He had a really good shot at the end of the third period, like right before the end of regulation. Zach LaRue had a great chance on the breakaway. But that's a really good goaltender in Philip Gustafsson. I mean, there's nothing that LaRue did wrong on that play. It was perfectly executed. That's a really good goaltender. And so it's like they're doing the right things. And I'm with you. I don't always like to blame things on, this team is snake bit, because it sounds like a cop out, but you really are seeing it. Like, I don't know if anyone is keeping track of, posts per 60, but if they are, Lord, I feel like the Predators are number 1 by a lot in that stat right now. And as far as, like you said, it's going to be a slog. Like, if you are walking down the street and you fall into a hole, like a deep hole, you don't just pop out of it. Like, you have to climb and you have to work, and it's going to be dirty and it's going to be ugly. And it's not just going to all of a sudden be like, hey, I'm out of the hole. Like, you need to work to get there. And so I don't think, and I understand the frustration, I understand the impatience, but this is something that it's not going to change overnight. And I know I've said that before, but I think that, it's, we saw this a little bit last year, and I understand different season, different personnel, different situation. But I think that there just wasn't this trust in the system last year. And it seemed like guys were almost overthinking the system. And we're seeing it a little bit now, even with like good Lord, how many times has, there been a 2-on-1 chance for the Predators, and right when they get to the net, they pass it instead of shoot it. It's like, what? It's like there's this lack of trust in the system, and they're just overthinking it. And that, like what Brunette said in that clip we just played about, like, we're starting to get a little freer with things. And it's like, that's kind of what you need, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Yes, absolutely. And again, just stay frustrated. We get it 100%. But if you are looking for something to give you hope, these games give you a measure of they took a step, like they found a handhold in the hole on the street in these games. It's going to be ugly and mucky to get out of this. One of the things that, I learned in therapy is, when do you say the things and when do you pause and think before you speak? Coming up, Steven Stamkos had that moment after the Tampa Bay Lightning game. We're going to play the clip of Stamkos post game, and we'll talk about what we think may or may not be going on in the locker room. And yes, friends, we have got to have a very frank conversation about the goaltending situation. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's the way daily fantasy sports should be played. It is not you against 1,000 strangers. It's you against the PrizePicks projections for your favorite players in your favorite sports. The Predators, of course, rely heavily on UC Saros to keep them in games. Why not go with more when it comes to saves on Saros in this week's games? Go ahead and download the PrizePicks app today, and you can use our code LOCKEDONNHL, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So check out all the action at PrizePicks. Run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Just like your favorite sports teams, we are all driven by the search for better. When it comes to hiring, though, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Listeners of our show are going to get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked-on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and let them know you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Again, check it out at Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, Emma, there was a moment in the locker room after that Tampa Bay Lightning game, which was, let's be honest, a game that comes with a lot of feels if you are Steven Stamkos. And it generated a lot of interest. And look, this is what I will say, and Emma, correct me if you read this differently. This was the most frustrated I have seen Steven Stamkos since we have been introduced to him.
For sure. It was very, very evident. Probably, I mean, he just got embarrassed in front of all of his friends. I can't blame him.
Yeah, it was
frustrated too.
It was not great. The performance against Tampa Bay, better than what Andrew Brunette initially felt, but still not what we saw from them in Minnesota. And there was a lot that we could have clipped to show from Steven Stamkos just to kind of back up the Steven Stamkos is over it vibe. But this was a question that Robbie Stanley asked. And so I want to play this clip, and then Emma and I are just going to talk about this briefly.
How mystifying to you is that lack of offense given the people in this room who have scored so much in their careers before?
I mean, I have some thoughts on that, but, it's, yeah. Like I said, it's, you got guys that can put the puck in the net for sure, but we need to find ways to generate, getting open and guys seeing things and guys finding seams and, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to score. It's the hardest thing to do in the NHL to score goals. And obviously we got guys that have done it. It's a little different this year. You're in a funk and you try to find ways. I mean, we're not going to quit here, but, we need to find a way, and myself included. And it's, it's tough.
All right, Emma, pure speculation. This is not reporting. But what do you think Steven Stamkos almost said there? It felt like he was going to name some names.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That, to me, I read that as, see, Minka's even upset about it. I don't know if y'all
having it,
but she's not having it. No, we're very, I think it's very much I really want to call out someone or someone's plural in particular, but I remember who I am and where I am, and I can't do that right now. And it was funny because I wrote about this, this exchange over at the Hockey News, and I forget exactly the phrasing I used in the story. So everyone should go check it out and see what I wrote, because I can't even remember it. But it was something to the effect of, like, he seemed to have a hard time remaining diplomatic in his response to that
Yes.
question, because I think it's, again, people can read that different ways, and like, oh, he's mad at the coaches, oh, he's mad at the players, oh, he's mad at this or at that. And you could tell as he kept talking in the response, he started to kind of get his former captain speak back a little bit and be like, okay, I'm not going to call anyone out, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. And he acknowledged that, yeah, it isn't just going to be like one guy who needs to pick it up, or one like couple of guys. I think it's going to be everyone has to step up and has to figure out what the problem is here. And like he said, is he has some thoughts. So do we. We also have some thoughts on what the problems could be here. But it's tough. It's tough. Because you don't really get any, at least, and correct me if you feel differently, but I think that for those of us who've been in the locker room and been around this team, you don't really get a sense that there is drama in the room. So I don't think it's quite elevated to that, but I don't know. I just think that it's like, again, frustration, dangerous emotion, because you can get frustrated with yourself, or you can get frustrated with something else entirely. I mean, I know for myself, if I'm frustrated with one thing, pick a thing, like, I get cut off on the highway, that's going to ruin my mood the rest of the day. I'm going to get frustrated and short tempered about a lot of things. And I think that's kind of what you're starting to see a little bit.
Yeah. And I would agree with you. We've had people ask us, like, hey, like, has Bruno lost the locker room? Hey, has Yossi lost the locker room as the captain? I don't see, and there is no evidence of division in this locker room. There is no evidence that Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault have come in here and their experience has kind of thrown the leadership balance off kilter. No, there's just none of that. There's no evidence that the players don't have faith in Andrew Brunette. We just aren't seeing it. We're not hearing it. And you can pick up on that kind of thing without words. Like you just can. So I don't see any evidence of that. Here is the part that I think is the most tricky for the Nashville Predators right now. They have gotten into this mess individually. As individual players, they are struggling. There's really not anybody whose name isn't Jussi Saros who isn't struggling. And so when you have a group whose problem has started because everybody individually is struggling, it's tricky, because the only way you get out of this is collectively as a team. And it's hard when, God bless Ryan O'Reilly in the post game. Again, I hope he listens to this episode. This is your free therapy session, Ryan O'Reilly. He knows he's struggling individually, and he's of course he takes responsibility for it, and then everything else in the world. But you only are going to get out of this as a team collectively. And so it can't be like one player is just going to go on his own and he's just going to fix this all on his own. It has to be done collectively. And that's tricky to do when you have a bunch of individual players who are frustrated and who are trying really hard to not only work out of the on-ice issues, but to work out of the mental issues. And I want to play a real quick clip from Ryan O'Reilly in the post game after Minnesota, because he addresses this, and I think it's worth a listen. So this is what Ryan O'Reilly said after the Minnesota game.
It falls on myself and top guys too. We have to find a way to get that next goal, and get that trust back in ourselves. I know for myself, there's a lot of doubt when you're out there, and it's just not good. We have to step up. Gosh, I don't really know. I've been trying lots of things. I know other guys have too, and it's there's a certain way to channel it. I think it's doing the right things together and leaning on each other and picking each other up when these things happen, and that's something I think that'll help.
Okay, first of all, Ryan O'Reilly, this is what I need you to do every day. Go look in the mirror and say, I am worthy. I am special. I am talented. I am not responsible for global warming. I just need you to do that. I worry. This is a boy I worry about. When you look at this team and you look at the frustration level and you look at all the individuals struggling, Emma, what would your message be in the locker room?
I mean, easier said than done for sure, but I think that you would have to say, like, if I got a minute to talk to these guys, I would say, listen, you can't start turning on each other. And I don't think that's what's happening. But
Agreed.
again, when you get frustrated, just like a reminder, you have to stick together and lean on each other when you're like individually, you're not doing well. And I understand that, but you are stronger together. You're stronger as a whole. And you are the sum of your parts, and I understand those parts are not exactly firing on all cylinders right now, but I think that that's the thing. I mean, we've seen it. Like you said, UC Saros has been incredible. He can't carry the team. Roman Josi, 5-game point streak right now. He's trying, but he can't carry the team, and no one can. And I mean, not, in any way that's going to be consistent or sustainable. So I think that you have to get out of your own heads. Again, so much easier said than done. I understand that, but get out of your own heads, start leaning on each other, stop getting so bogged down in what you're doing wrong or what you're not doing. And, start to just, you need that kind of shared brain. And it's, I don't want to use the hockey cliche. It's like, oh, we're all pulling on the same rope, but like you need to be because like, it's just too much of like, I'm angry, I'm in my own head, like I'm just gonna put my head down and work and try to work out of it. And I understand that, but then you put blinders on and you don't see what everyone else is dealing with, and you have to work together. And I think, like you said it at the beginning of the show, Ann, and I know it was, in reference to the fan base, but I think it applies here too, that misery loves company. And I think that all of these guys are miserable, and they could be less miserable if they figure out a better way to work together and just not get caught up in their own individual frustration.
Yeah. And we talked about it. This is a slow crawl out of the muck. And I think I've seen a lot of people say, like, there needs to be a players only meeting and Roman Josi shouldn't be the captain because he's not mean enough to own that locker room.
First of all, y'all think there hasn't been a players only meeting at this point?
Yeah.
Come on. There's been a few.
And here's what I will say. Roman Josi is as nice a person, truly, as you could imagine. But if you think Roman Josi doesn't have an outside voice, and if you think that Roman Josi isn't afraid to use that, that is false. Here's the tricky part of that theory of like, you need a players only meeting and somebody needs to stand up and call everybody out. Who's going to do it? The only person that can stand up in that room and call people out is the players who are performing at peak level. You know who that is? That's UC Saros. Do you know who does not have an outside voice and who is not going to be that guy? UC Saros. Look, UC Saros could walk up and down that post-game locker room and throw punch every one of these players, and they'd be like, yes, sir, may I have another? Because he can. But you know what? That's not who he is, and he has done enough for this team. He does not need to become somebody he's not for this team. What I think, and you hit the nail on the head, it's about collectively. It is about not having blinders on and trying to dig your way out individually. This team has to get out of this hot mess collectively. And that's what it's going to take. And friends, here's where we're at. It's going to suck a little bit longer. It could suck a lot longer. Can't guarantee it. But there is measurable improvement on ice. And I think, Andrew Brunette said in the post game, and we didn't clip it, he said, this is going to build something in this team if they get out of this that will be very useful down the road. And so I think we're holding on for that. One of the players who will not be in the locker room pulling on the same rope anymore, and I got to tell you, Emma, I am sad about this. Scott Wedgewood. That's right. Scott Wedgewood was traded in a goalie move to Colorado. Coming up, we're going to talk about that move, and we're also going to try to help you release some goalie angst. Today's episode is brought to you by Built. Listen up, renters. Do you ever feel like you are stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch your Built points roll in. You can use these points to jet off on a dream vacation, put your points towards a flight or hotel stay. You can even use them to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards a future rent payment. They are designed to meet you and your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. Again, that's joinbilt.com/lockedonnhl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Again, joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points with your rent payment today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it is all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, and it's all going to be on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Emma, huge news broke Saturday morning, which made me very, very sad because Friday night, Scott Wedgewood said that my outfit was cool and we became besties right then. And then Saturday morning, my new bestie, Scott Wedgewood, was traded to Colorado in exchange for Justus Annunen and a 6th round pick in the 2025 draft. So, Emma, tell me, what do you think of the deal?
I think the deal is actually pretty good. I think for both sides. I think that this was a mutually beneficial trade, because Nashville gets a draft pick and they also get a backup goalie who is significantly younger, and can, he can be a part of this team's future a little bit more. And, you look at where Colorado is with their goalie situation. Justus Annunen had at several points kind of been relied upon to be the guy, just because Alexander Georgiev has been struggling so much. And you're asking this 24-year-old kid, which, by the way, 24, you could tell me he was 14 and I would agree with you. I would believe
never
you.
grow a playoff beard. He could never do it.
Oh my gosh, he looks so young. I mean, aside from the fact that he's 6'4", I mean, he looks like a baby. But anyway, beside the point, I think that, he was kind of thrust into this role in Colorado where he did fine. He was fine in that role, but he was on the path to become the guy, even probably before the end of the year in Colorado. Now, Wedgewood obviously brings a little bit more veteran experience to this, this situation here. Annunen is, again, he's young. He's shown a lot of promise, but he's young and inexperienced. And if you're counting on that to be the guy who is going to stabilize things in a very unstable crease, that's probably not going to be the best. Now you get a guy like Wedgewood, veteran, been around the block.
Yes.
He
Come
can
on.
absolutely do that. And I think he's going to get a lot more starts in Colorado than he would in Nashville, and can really, help stabilize the very precarious goaltending situation that's going on over there. Whereas now I think that this should make fans who were upset about losing Yaroslav Askarov, this should make them feel much better, because they are now getting back. They're not just getting a rental or a 32-year-old who's gonna, be here for a couple years and then move on. They're getting a young, still impressionable goalie who can work with the goaltending department in Nashville,
Yes.
and learn from, not only from the coaches, but learn from UC Saros, learn from Pekka Rinne, his homeboy. They are from the same hometown in Finland. I mean, I think this just makes a ton of sense, because it's someone you can develop and build up through your system. And it makes you feel a little bit better that you haven't completely lost, a future piece in Askarov. I'm not saying that he is Yaroslav Askarov, but I'm saying he's a young, very promising goalie who can be part of this team's future for a long time.
I
So
agree with
I like
you.
the deal for both sides. I think it makes total sense.
I agree with you 100%. I think both teams can walk away from this feeling really good. Look, Colorado has got to get their goaltending situation stabilized, because this is a team with so much good going on in front of them. They cannot have goaltending cost them. Scott Wedgewood is going to be able to do that. I love the word stabilize. Scott Wedgewood is going to stabilize that for them. For Nashville, for the angst over losing the young future goaltender, Justus Annunen has so much potential to be that. Is his game the same as Yaroslav Askarov's? Nobody's game is like Yaroslav Askarov's, y'all. So don't think this is going to look exactly like that. But as far as potential, what we have seen from him in Colorado, there is a lot there. And let me tell you something. If there is a goaltending department, a department of goaltending excellence that knows how to develop good goaltenders, good young goaltenders, Nashville has it. And that's not to take anything away from anyone else, but let's just talk about what's real. Like, Nashville, this is their jam. So I like this deal. Look, you got a 6th round pick. Well, it's not a huge little extra something, but it's not nothing. And I think you got a piece that is going to be really good for Nashville down the road as well. So I like this deal. Emma, you wanted to talk about just the goaltending angst that Nashville has. So do you just want to address it? Sometimes in therapy, you just have to hear hard things. And so let's just say some hard things to see if this will help people move past the goaltending angst in Nashville.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I have a few things to say, and one of them we have already sort of touched on with the whole. I saw a lot of comments after the trade was announced that the Predators got Annunen and got rid of Wedgewood, and a lot of comments were Predators fans saying, gee, if only they had a young up and coming goalie prospect who could be in this situation, and then they wouldn't have need to make a trade, blah blah blah. Listen, this still would not have been a good situation for Yaroslav Askarov to be in. Why? Because of everything I just said. Yaroslav Askarov is closer to being ready to be a guy somewhere. He's not going to be the guy in Nashville. He never was, because you got UC Saros in front of you. And I'm sorry, but 10 out of 10 times I'm picking Saros over Askarov. I am.
11
I'm
out
sorry.
of 10. Yep.
And so I think that this situation still would not have been any better for him, because let's say he stayed in Milwaukee, Wedgewood gets traded, Askarov gets called up. He's still going to be the backup. And we know UC Saros is one of, if not the most overused goalies in the league, right up there with Connor Hellebuck. And so I think that he's going to get called up to sit on the bench and watch a lot of games. And that's not going to be good for him either. And that wasn't what he wanted. That's not what he wanted. He didn't just want to be in the NHL. He wanted to be the guy in the NHL. And that wasn't going to happen. Even if, if the Predators had never signed Wedgewood and they brought Askarov up to be the backup, that was not going to be a good situation for him or for the team. And so I think that now there are a lot of things to be upset about with the Predators, and we can talk about how I personally think that there are some ways that the whole Askarov situation could have been handled better by Barry Trotz, that, he probably should have traded him earlier, done it sooner than he did. That's all valid, and we can talk about that. But do not come at me and tell me that this was Yaroslav Askarov's spot that, now Wedgewood stole and then Justus Annunen has now stolen. No, Justus Annunen is a perfect backup goalie for this team as it is right now.
Yes.
Askarov was not going to be that. So that's one thing. Number 2.
Take it home.
Another thing I need people to stop whining about. And yes, whining. I did not stutter. Y'all are whining. You, Anne, and I have gone on record many times as saying how much we love Kevin Lankinen. We are locked on Kevin Lankinen. We all love him as much as, if not more than, the next person.
If there was a room of people who loved Kevin Lankinen, Emma and I would be at the top of the list unless we were his mom or dad.
Yes.
Love Kevin Lankinen.
So I've seen a lot of other comments about, well, like, I can't believe the Predators let Lankinen walk and now their goaltending situation is in shambles. Okay, 2 things. Number 1, they did not let him walk. Can we stop with this narrative? They didn't let him walk. As a matter of fact, they tried to bring him back. Barry Trotz has gone on record saying that the team offered him more to stay in Nashville than what he's currently making in Vancouver. He thought, and I don't think, clearly misjudged the market for whatever reason. He thought that he could get more playing somewhere else. He didn't. It got to be the end of the off season, kind of crunch time. I got to sign somewhere. So he signed at a huge bargain of a deal with the Vancouver Canucks.
Yes.
He could have stayed in Nashville. They tried to make that happen before they went and got Scott Wedgewood. So don't tell me that, they let Lankinen walk. No, they didn't. You don't want to spend, he was making $2 million last year. I'm sorry, but you don't want to spend more than that on your backup goalie. Like, it doesn't make good financial sense. So they didn't let him walk. They made him an offer. He respectfully declined. He went to Vancouver. That's fine. But they didn't just let him walk. And the second part of that, now look at the goalie situation. Actually, the goalie situation in Nashville is pretty dang good. Like, yes. I honestly, as much as I love Scott Wedgewood, and I have gone on record as saying how much I love Scott Wedgewood.
Yep.
I think that, long term, this makes a ton of sense. It makes a ton of sense for Nashville to have Justus Annunen in here. He's a young guy. He's developing. He's more impressionable. He can be developed in their system, but he's also got a really good amount of NHL experience. And that's going to be really valuable to this team. And he is not going to be thrust into this high leverage, high pressure situation that he was in Colorado, where it was like, hey man, our starting goalie is really bad. And so we need you to do a lot more. And that's a lot to ask of a babyface 24-year-old. So now he's coming to a situation in Nashville where he's not going to need to be the guy, because hello, UC Saros is the guy. And so he can kind of sit back, develop his game a little bit more, and it's just going to be a much better situation. And so again, all of the complaints about Yaroslav Askarov and Kevin Lankinen, there are a lot of things that you have every right to be upset about with the way that the Predators have handled various things. Those two, don't start. Just don't even start, because it's not a valid argument. And that's all I have to say.
I just absolutely agree with that. And also, just with Kevin Lankinen, he wanted to be a starter. And look, love Kevin Lankinen, but Kevin Lankinen, UC Saros. I'm taking UC Saros 10 out of 10 times. Now, I'm going to like Kevin Lankinen a little bit more. No offense, UC Saros. But 10 out of 10, I'm taking UC Saros. I agree with you. And look, like Emma said, there are a lot of things to be worked up about this team. Completely valid things. But one of the things you learn in therapy is you have to look at what is real and what is true and then decide what you're going to do with it. And so this is just a moment of tough truth, and then deal with the facts as they are.
Yes. And as a tool that my therapist likes to use is the emotional ruler, where not every single situation that goes poorly needs to be a 5 out of 5 on the emotional ruler. Like sometimes it can be like a 1 or a 2. And people are treating the whole Kevin Lankinen situation or the Askarov situation because understandably they're mad, and rightfully so, about a lot of other things that are going on with the Predators right now. So that makes it feel worse. But like in the grand scheme of things, Kevin Lankinen not being on this team, it's not a 5. It's like a 2. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's all get out our emotional rulers and, try to, just actually evaluate these things for what they are, because I know it feels worse. It's going to feel worse when the team's doing poorly, but I really don't think that they would be in a better situation. If you look at the reason they're mad is because the team is losing right now. I don't think that the team's record would be any different right now if Kevin Lankinen was here.
Right.
So, I mean,
Agreed.
sorry, but I understand why you're upset, but let's try to separate what, like you said, the truth, the reality from the fiction, and let's use our rulers to determine, okay, how bad is this actually? Would things be different if Kevin Lankinen was here right now? Probably not. So let's maybe bump it from a 5 down to a 2, maybe even a 1, because you have to look at these things for what they are.
Yes, 100%. And again, we're all in our feels. Look, Nashville Predators fans, we needed therapy. I know this episode has run long, but friends, therapy is an hour, and we want to give you a fair shake at getting what you need from us. So we love that you hang in there with us. We hope that this has helped. And again, you feel how you want to feel. This has not been the season that any of us thought it was going to be. There are significant issues with this team. We're just trying to kind of tell you, here are the things that we're seeing. Here are the things that we think are maybe just a 1 on the emotional ruler. We miss Kevin Lankinen as much or more than anybody ever, but we get that. Before we sign off on this therapy session, Emma, let everyone know, where can they find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. That is going to do it for this therapy session of the Locked On Predators therapy session. We hope that you all have a great Monday. We are going to be back tomorrow, fresh, new perspective, and ready to tackle even more fun from this Nashville Predators team. We'll see you then.